So today I want to talk about technology because I think that I've had some conversations recently which have illuminated to me that often the way that we're looking at problem solving is going for the optimal option rather than something which will work. I'm Charlie, and I'm a behaviour analyst. I work with young people with autism, ADHD, additional needs, and I am a behaviour analyst. Technically, the term would be a board certified behaviour analyst or BCBA. I work to enable people to learn skills that they find difficult or might not be able to learn without a sufficient scaffolding. And I also work with some businesses in terms of helping streamline their services so that they're able to access a wider audience. So the example I'm going to use is a friend of mine who's called Munir. Munir is a journalist who writes in Arabic and talked to me today about the challenge he has been facing across his career with producing the work which he finds to be most impactful, where we were discussing how he would finish a series of newsletters that he has been writing for essentially the larger part of his very long life. And his feedback was that he felt that he hadn't been doing the kind of work that he had originally wanted to be doing. And he discussed the literacy rate in Egypt, which is where he's from, and how there is a 30% literacy rate and a 70% rate of illiteracy within the cohort of people who may be reading his magazine or his newsletter. And we talked about the fact that he felt that he wanted to be supporting with a larger style project around improving the literacy rate of that particular cohort of people, and talked about how, from his perspective, it should be easy for a group of people to be able to come together to support that group to learn how to read and improve that particular skill set. My response was practical, because I think practicality in these situations is actually the most key outcome. Because the thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to improve a particular indicator, and when you're trying to improve a particular indicator, going for the optimal solution may actually be much harder than going for a functional and practical solution, which may rapidly increase the indicator that you're trying to improve. In this case, the number of people who are able to access Munir's newsletter. So, my suggestion was technological, and took about 5 minutes for me to come up with, and involved me finding a Arabic text-to-speech translation application just on Google, quick Google search. And my solution to him was that you would like to pick solutions which are low effort for people to engage with, especially when they are not fully aware of the benefit of the behaviour that you are trying to get them to engage in. And in this case, there are additional challenges around like societal view of education. Some people viewing the education system to be elitist and maybe being suspicious of being told to do specific things around maybe engaging with reading and writing training. And my view on this is essentially that you have to incentivize people to make the decision to engage in behavior on their own, and that you do not want to indicate to them that they must engage in that behavior if you want to avoid accidentally having a countervailing effect, an effect which causes people to engage less with that system. So my answer was to put on the bottom of Munir's newsletter that if a reader had anyone that they thought would enjoy the article who was not able to read it, that the text-to-speech device that I'd found would be listed below, and that any individual who wished to share that with a friend who wasn't able to actually read the newsletter could potentially share those two together and support the person to be able to copy the text into the text-to-speech device and then get it to read it aloud to them in Arabic. And the reason I wanted to talk about this a little bit today is because the solution that Munir had selected was optimal, has the best outcome in terms of the long term. People would be able to read, and then they'd be able to read, even more things than just what they had originally been intending to increase. But the solution required a level of sort of integrated support from the people who like Manir just wanted the larger group of people being able to read and being able to educate themselves, and government institutions who may not be as heavily incentivized on getting a very informed population, or groups of people who were able to actually teach those reading and writing skills, which may not have the availability to do that because their priorities are more towards teaching the young, for example, or the less advantaged in society. And it kind of got me thinking that solutions have to be practical and they have to be realistic for the level of effort that a person wishes to put into a situation to get a particular beneficial outcome. So this is a concept of reinforcement and effort of response, which as a behaviour analyst I'm very familiar with, having designed programs sufficiently around these kinds of mechanisms which tend to manage our perception of task difficulty or whether a skill or a outcome is particularly worth it. And I think that my solution is short term. It leads to an outcome which can then lead to other outcomes in the future, which lead towards Manir's optimal outcome. And my perception, considering the conversation that we'd had, was that going for the optimal outcome initially and immediately may have the opposite effect that it intended to, and it may cause people to disengage from the system. And so this ties into people's motivation to choose to engage in behaviours, and people's motivation to seek information of a particular kind. And I think this is a really important lens for us to keep in focus while we are intending to fix the wrongs that we find in the world around us, is that the optimal solution may not be the practical solution, and the practical solution may lead to the optimal solution in the long term. And this means that the sequencing in that particular case should be to choose the practical solution first and then work towards the optimal solution in the long term. And that is what I wanted to talk about today. I realise that this is obviously very unreferenced and speaking in kind of broad strokes around a situation rather than what I would normally talk about, which would be, something specific and scientific. But I think it's an interesting conversation, and I'm interested to hear back from you guys about what you think about what I've said. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Bye.